Kol hamoadim b'tלים chutz mipורים, all of the Yom Tov will be bottled except for Purim, says the Medrash. Not that it won't be observed, but rather shalasid love iti simcha hamoadim k'shraga b'tira. The simcha of the Yom Tov will be like a candle, a flame in sunlight, overwhelmed by the gilui that will be lasid love. Whereas that's kol hamoadim. Chutz mipורים means mashenkin simchas v'inyan me'apurim lo yivatelu. The simcha in Purim will not be nullified. So what's the reason that Purim will contribute even lasid love after Mashiach comes? So the kivin should call b'nei Yisrael avad zokin tafenoshim. The reason, the uniqueness of Purim is that all Yidden, everyone without exception, under the Meshach Kemat Shona Shlema, they were for almost a whole year, from the time of the Gzeira to the time of Purim. Gzeira was Pesach. Shona Shlema b'tenuah shel Mesiras Nefesh, a whole year of Mesiras Nefesh, because, as the Rebbe says, had anybody opted to renounce the Yiddishkeit, they would have been spared. Nobody did. As we pointed out in the past, this is a chiddush of the Alter Rebbe, but we don't have such a medrash. Maybe he did, but we don't find such a medrash. At any rate, it's a big yesod in Chassidus. The chiddush, this fact, the chiddush of Purim of this Mesiras Nefesh. In other words, it's one thing to have Mesiras Nefesh under pressure at a moment. That's also an extraordinary level. But a sustained Mesiras Nefesh over the course of a year, under the changing circumstances and the seichel and the argument and the rationale, that's extraordinary. And it's everybody, but one exception. Not vadzokin tafenoshim. The yad shloheil shaykh, shetiyetz machshavas chutz, the lashon is of the Alter Rebbe, that they didn't even entertain such a thought. So that's more even than the pale they didn't renounce. They didn't even consider renouncing. It's an extraordinary level of gilui of etzem and neshama. And this is for a whole year again. So therefore, that's the beer in Chassidus. As a pearl gam l'mayla. This is unique to any other Yom Tov. Sheimshucho in yonim nadim b'yosef. That their divine response should be extraordinarily lofty. And this affected a simcha which is incomparable. I feel the simcha hamoadim, even relative to the simcha of Yom Tov, actually Pesach it doesn't say, but Shavuos it says once, and Sukkot 3 times. And this extraordinary giluyim, and likewise the resultant simcha, is because of Mesiras Nefesh of Yidden, the Kibbutz Yehudim, that they then affirmed and accepted upon themselves all of Torah mitzvahs with the whole new covenant. So heaven responded likewise. That's the beer that's brought b'chlal Chassidus. The question is a very interesting question, which I've never seen before. It's only brought in one other place. If the whole inyan is that for the whole year they were in the state of Mesiras Nefesh, so why does Purim begin and is giluyim with the milchama against the non-Jews? First the Shoshana and Abira, but that's actually 2 days there, not first, but 2 days b'Shoshana Abira b'Chamadinus HaMelech and everywhere. B'Eifen, Da'arei b'Sineiim, they killed Chamisha v'Shiv Melech, 75,000. Rak l'mochad, only the next day for the whole country, the next day after that, Kashanech Meir Shushan, when they arrested from the enemies, so that's when Purim happened. So therefore, meaning to say, that's when the Giluyim began. Why not during this time of Mesiras Nefesh when the Neshama is revealed?
That's the question. Why isn't the Yom Tov for a year?
Yom Tov a whole year l'chayda can only have the Yom Tov is practically one's downfall. I'm not sure, but the Gilui of Purim, I'm not clear myself. It's an unusual question. I looked up there, it says in Order 9, Tafresh and Vav, so I said one line. It says that the Inyan, the Yemei Purim, was only after they defeated their enemies. But why not before that? We said the Nefesh was before. The Gilui Milamayla. Seems the Gilui Milamayla didn't happen till then.
That's the classic Jewish holiday. Trying to get destroyed, victorious, and in the end,
so okay, so practically speaking, the Yom Tov will start then, but you said the Inyan of Purim, the Giluim of Purim, that's a consequence. The Inyan of Purim is the Gilui of the Neshama of Mesilas Nefesh, which elicits the divine response above. So that happens before. Why does the whole Gilui of Purim happen only at the end with Haman's defeat? That's okay. So he's defeated. That's a consequence. It's not the Inyan here. It's Gilui Likus, which was elicited by the Neshama by Yidden. That started before. Let's look a bit further. There's a one more little line he adds, and maybe we'll add to our understanding of the question. What exactly is he suggesting? But let's look in the brackets. After the brackets. So the whole Purim is only when Noach may Aveim, and therefore there's a distinction between the whole country and Shushan. Everywhere else they fought when on the 13th, and rested on the 14th. They made that day celebration. As the pasuk says, the Jews that lived in the open cities, they made and established for future generations that Purim will be on the 14th. That they gathered and slew their enemies with many more on both days. And they rested on the 15th. So the Lechora now wrapping up the question, given Shina Mesilas Nefesh b'meshach kol hashana, whole Nakuda here that sets Purim apart is the Mesilas Nefesh, and that was for the duration of the year, and certainly when they fought against their enemies. Clearly, the Gilui should have been before. So find some day before to mark the beginning of these Giluyim. If not, he says at least the Meshach HaMelchama. So you have a set time. You've got day 13 for the whole Medina, and for those in Shushan Abira, day 13 and 14. So it should be a 2-day Purim or a 3-day Purim. That's the shame. What?
Why can't we say the same? Why can't we say the same thing like by Hanukkah?
Hanukkah, we don't say that it came as a result of the Milchama of Yidden. Yeah, but the whole Gilui of the it's not such a strong kasha. The whole Gilui is connected with the menorah. That they lit the menorah, even though they only found one cruse of oil, they still lit with it. And this happened. There's different components to
Hanukkah.
Yeah,
over here is one ness, and one of the nissim of Hanukkah was that they rested.
Okay, I'm sorry. The basic difference is that sadly on Hanukkah, most Jews had succumbed to the Greeks. Never mind the Machshavas Chutz. That embraced Greek culture was only minority. It's a minority of the Yidden by Hanukkah. It's not the same Inyan.
And what's about Mitzrayim? By Mitzrayim too, it was the same situation.
Mitzrayim, they didn't want to go out. They were schlepped out.
by Mitzrayim too, most people died.
So that's why.
And it was only a minimum.
So that's why we don't celebrate Tzias Mitzrayim before it actually happened.
Here we're celebrating.
Here we're asking that the whole celebration somehow Purim should start before, because the schus, if you like, and the whole what makes Purim different, so much so that Lasadove, the Gilu, would be even greater than any other Yom Tov, was the Mesidas Nefesh. You don't find that by any other Yom Tov the same way. Adarabah, by Tzias Mitzrayim, they didn't want to go out. They were cut near Munna. They had to be taken out quickly, otherwise they would refuse to go.
That's why we celebrate, like when Esther went into Israel, that was the start of the
That's Esther only. It's only Esther. The Dik is Anoshim, Noshim, Betaf, a whole year, at least during the Milchama. So we don't find the same parallel anywhere else. Exactly. Everybody was in a state of Mesidas Nefesh, the Machshavas Chutz.
I didn't learn this Maamar, so I have no idea, but it says, Im Ken Hayatzim. So if we is in like Giluim the Purim from the Hamoadim. We're discussing the first part of the question, which is why are we celebrating it on Yud Dalet when it was a whole year?
It should start here.
This is why wait until the Milchama to show the Giluim at that time. Everything was Benistan. Nothing happened.
No. Giluim means they well. No. Now as we establish, it seems to be now as we establish Purim. What is Purim? A Giluim Milamayla that's extraordinary as a result of our Avodah. It should be before it should acknowledge the matzav of Eden that a mamshich, this Gilui. So it should start before, at very least, that when they had Milchama, which is like a open Mesidas Nefesh, picking up a sword against an enemy, a tiny minority, and they fearlessly slew their enemies. And Mesidas, can you ask on that? They had a shus from the Melech to do so. So the big Mesidas Nefesh is not killing their enemies. Big Mesidas Nefesh was when they didn't get the green light from the Melech, and they could have opted out, and they didn't. That's l'chem, not the Milchama. Why is he stressing the Milchama as a big Mesidas Nefesh? Okay, in Pashtus, had the green light, but they were not soldiers. They weren't trained. They were a tiny minority. They picked up swords. So we should celebrate. That result is we should celebrate. The Chachamim should have been kaveya, Purim to be observed before. Bring out the Mesidas Nefesh, at least that one day before or 2 days before for Shushan Abira.
Celebrating the victory was the foundation of it was Mesidas Nefesh, leading to a victory because it was an oppression. Now it was a victory through the Mesidas Nefesh of that whole year. Fine, but that's what we're celebrating. The completion of this Mesidas Nefesh, that it worked. So
yeah, so the Osed Love, that's why it seems to be stressing that the Osed Love, the kvetch is not going to be that we killed, that Haman was defeated. Osed Love, the celebration is the Gilui of the Neshamas Yisrael and the Eivishter's response. And therefore the world is fixed up. The fixing up and Haman being, that's not the kvetch. It's not going to be the kvetch, it's not the emphasis. Now it's Managolas here, because we got enemies. So we celebrate the downfall of this enemy, and we hope that so that the other enemies will meet a similar fate. When there's no enemies anymore, what's the celebration? Once upon a time, we were threatened. The celebration is the Gila of Neshama Yisrael. That's an eternal thing. That's the whole point of it all. So that should be. You're not saying we shouldn't celebrate also the next day the victory. But acknowledge and start the whole thing with the matzav of Yidden. That's the ikad of the whole thing. That's the enduring property.
Knowledge is part of the Purim. It's part of the whole thing of Purim. But this is when, like you were saying, that Hashem's response. This is what we're celebrating. Oh, I mean, like even Mishnah and Southern
The emphasis of the pasuk is v'noach me'oveihim. It's putting the emphasis on the enemy is defeated. That's not the enduring property. The enduring property is the matzav of Yidden. It's pasuk. Why Purim on this day? Also, Yemishta which means Mesiras Nefesh ended. Makes the question stronger. Threat's over, Mesiras Nefesh ended, maybe they went back to their old matzav. Adarabah, the Mesiras Nefesh is gone. Mesiras Nefesh of Machshavas Chutz was dafka before. That's where they should start then at least and embrace that.
We give that victory credit to the Mesiras Nefesh. No? Because of the Mesiras Nefesh, this was the result. We're celebrating the Mesiras Nefesh.
It's not in the pasuk. The whole emphasis is the threat is over. That's all the pasuk says. Not acknowledging all the matzah of Yidden that brought that about. And that's the main thing. That's why it's forever. In other words, rephrase that. Purim is not unique. Maybe some Mepharshim will say, and this is a good argument. Why will it endure forever? Because there was never such an existential threat to the entire Jewish people. Therefore, when that threat is over, we celebrate, and it's an eternal celebration. So this is that's not why it's eternal. What makes it eternal is the ruchnistic response of Yidden during this threat. That's the Nekudah. So where's that? And it's not that in the It's not there. It's putting the whole thing on the threat and the victory over the threat. You've got to probe and peel back and get the whole deal. It's not in. It should be Alpin Nigle, Chama Kiveya. We should celebrate Purim at the matzav of Gila Nisham.
Like we have on the other side, which is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, you have Tisha B'Av, you have Shivos B'Tanos, so the Sar B'Tavis, that are all points that get recognized in a continuum. Tisha B'Av was destroyed, this day it was entered, and this day was besieged.
Right.
You could have the same thing like Purim. We have a Purim Katan Katan on the day when the decree was made. You would recognize something about Purim, the Hamim would be Preveya at the beginning of this to recognize it. There's nothing.
Yeah, well, he's asking not at the beginning, it should be at the end at least. When you make Purim, just extend it to embrace the response of Yidden, because that's its enduring quality, not Haman's defeat.
Extended where? Earlier?
Earlier. Yeah, earlier. 2 days, 3 days before. Huh?
The original Gezerah we said would make the most sense.
No, the original Gezerah was in Nisan.
No, but I'm saying it was set before the Gimel.
Yeah.
So that's the day.
But the emphasis is not the date of Haman's Gezerah. The emphasis again is the emphasis here is why. One second. Emphasis why. The emphasis why there's not a machshavas chutz. When was that manifest? For a whole year. At least acknowledge it in the war before, not the day when it's over. And there's no need for that, and there's no need for that Mesiras Nefesh anymore. There's no need for it. And there's no ichacha that even continued. So the Ikar of Purim is being ignored. Ikar is not Haman's defeat. The Ikar is their matzah.
I have a question.
No.
When it comes, 1 second. When it comes
Maybe
to
when we see the
Shabbos,
answer, we'll answer the question better drastically. What?
when it comes to Shabbos, when do we celebrate Shabbos?
That's the answer he's looking for.
What are you getting to? No?
When it comes to Shabbos, when do we celebrate Shabbos? When we end the work. Just like a craftsman. A craftsman, he works, and then he finishes the completion, he sits back and he enjoys it.
Even in that, there's a recognition.
But that's what the Rabbi is saying here. The Ikar of Purim. I'm trying to say, L'choda, the Ikar of Purim is not Haman's downfall. That's not the reason why it's going to be not Batal Asid Lavai. It's not Batal because of the Matzav of Yidden. When was the Matzav of Yidden? Dafka before. I'll repeat again. After Haman is killed, that threat no longer exists. So the need to have that Mesiras Nefesh and Machshavas Chutz no longer present. We don't even have a Chachet continued. And what did the Rabbi say about the Tetzaveh? He's bemoaning that in Russia they had the Mesiras Nefesh. And they came to America, many Chassidim, The same chassid doesn't display that. That's the matzav here. Here we're celebrating Purim day when Lav Dafka Mesiras Nefesh, that matzav was even continued. And that's the ikar. That's why it's lost. It endures forever. Ikar chassim in HaSefer. It's not in therefore, no Muhammad. The therefore is...
So the premise,
Huh?
it's almost like the premise of the question is that Hanukkah is like the Nes is the issue. Pesach is the time. Purim is Mesiras Nefesh. So why is
Yeah.
With Pashas, what are we asking? Why is Purim on this day?
The Chachamim should have keveyed to start 2 days before.
Now it goes.
Forever, when they were first, we became the Yom Tov. We're celebrating Yom Tov. We're not going to ignore, obviously, Haman's downfall. We're rid of our enemy. But the Ikon and Pnimius of it is, look at you, shining Jew. Now, where did the Jew shine? He shone under the Gzeira. So it should be 3 days. Is that so terrible, 3-day Purim? There's sometimes a 3-day Purim Mishumas. V'lomo bo in Yoni me'apurim dafki l'mochadas kasher v'noyach ma'yavehem. Why is Purim only when they defeat their enemy, when the Mesiras Nefesh is over? Missing the point. The point is we celebrate the Yidden's Mesiras Nefesh. It seems to be the question. What are you saying, Chaim? We're not celebrating that the Yidden relaxed. We're celebrating the Yidden were on fire.
The guy has a challenge.
Cutting out, we're not hearing it properly.
When a guy sins,
Purim was always celebrating Mesiras Nefesh.
Okay, I see the beer later. It's a whole different. Hello.
This whole thing that the after everything is the measures.
He's not. He doesn't say it matters. He just makes a statement of fact. I think he quotes. He could quote our sages. I don't know. But anyway, but there isn't.
That in fact is like if somebody didn't have that.
Yeah, then you have a kasha.
All this discussion we're having, even the idea of Purim is completely different.
Is what?
They wouldn't have that kasha.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. And all of the biyurim of Chassidus, it all revolve around this Nakuda, which one degree or another, the Mesiras Nefesh. It's all based on this Alter Rebbe's word.
Private. But
Yeah, I mean, there are midrashim that lo yegiah leinu. So it's possible that Alter Rebbe had such a midrash, and we don't have it. And he quotes it B'Shem Razal. Obviously, the words medrash, but it's not the first time we see a rishon. Not a rishon. This is pretty recent. That's why it's unusual. But Rishonim had midrashim that we don't have. Chaim, you want to say something? No.
I was going to say
Yeah.
that until a person succumbs to a sin, he's fighting. And then, unfortunately, the Yetzirah wins. So why give him the reward for the trying, which is true, it's a reward. At the end, he sinned. Over here, we say, no, he fought, then he didn't succumb. So that's why the victory is not the battle. The victory is the victory that he didn't end up sinning.
it's not true. We learned in Tanya this past week. Every day that you fight, your record is
For every moment that you practice iskafia, you get rewarded. You light up the world. Just tell like you gotta.
But he's not saying that.
It's very clear. It's very clear. The Shaila is, I think, l'chayra is with thrashing it out. The last line of the Ois. V'lomo bo in Yoni me'apurim dafke l'mocharas. It's the next day. Kashev noyach me'eveh. The big sigh of relief are over. That's Purim? No. Purim is the fire of Mesiras Nefesh that existed before. That's got to be acknowledged. I don't think it's a complicated question. Huh? Let's go further.
But the question is based on
Speak up.
based on the fact that Purim is on the day after. So that's really the question. So why is it?
Yeah.
based on this?
Yeah.
Based on
And the question was brought to light when La'asid Lave, why will this day appear? Why will this day continue? Not because we had the biggest threat that we overcame. That's not the reason. The reason is the matzav of Yidden during that time. Again, because arguably, maybe some of us say it. Why Purim? Because it's not a holiday. There's such an existential threat of the final solution. So that's going to be forever. Says Chassidus, yeah, but that's not why it's going that Giloi. We're not going to be forever obsessing over final solutions and Haman and Jewish survival. It's not about Jewish survival. It's about the Giloi of the Neshama, not overcoming enemies. That's the Nekudah. And was a gewaltige Giloi of Neshama, not a machshavas chutz, and noshim etaf. That's the whole Purim. We're celebrating you, not the downfall of your enemy. It's you we're celebrating. Look what a precious neshama can do and is. That's the whole nekudah. So that's got to be embraced, be nikva in the whole celebration of Purim.
That's why it's because now that we're just celebrating you, that's just why us and Rabbi will be, because that's it. We're just celebrating you. Therefore, it's something forever, because the is just going to be strong.
That was the whole question. So therefore, Purim, we see what it is. It's so enduring that he is celebrating you, the Neshama and the Eibishter. So that should be factored into our celebration of Purim now, not just the downfall of Haman. And we should acknowledge, to start 2 days before, well, what are we celebrating now? Yidden B'Siddas Nefesh. We're talking about Yidden.
It'll be even greater simcha loss of when there's not even an existence of that, not even possible.
Exactly. So what's going to be left then? Only Neshamas.
Therefore, we already
and so that should be celebrated now. In other words, to make the question clear, everybody's contributing, which is very good. Now, the whole thing is down with Haman. Haman's defeated. That's the whole celebration. No question about it. It's important. He's not saying this should be ignored. But the main thing is celebrate the Yid. That should be part of the celebration of Chatchila. So started a day earlier. Wow, look at the Jew. And down with Haman. Therefore, down with Haman. We won. It's not we won. It's we're celebrating. That's the Shiloh. Huh?
Better to celebrate when there's no distraction. Makes sense. Now that there's no distraction.
And so therefore, loss of love, it will continue because there's no enemies to defeat anymore. So what are you celebrating? You're celebrating this. Then, what happens then is instructive of how it should be nikva now.
Makes sense. It makes sense. It's after.
No. Oh, you're asking another way. Why are you saying after? You're questioning the question.
That makes sense. What's a celebration? The celebration is that there's no more existence of evil.
Well, that's what the celebration is, no more existence of evil. No, that's something. No.
The Jew is shining.
No, the celebration is the chiyuv, the Yidden and the Eibush. Not that there's no evil. When we're celebrating the whole time, there's no evil, there's no evil, there's no evil. Who's talking about it anymore? No one's interested. It served its purpose. It's been transformed. It no longer exists. What's now is Neshamas and the Eibush. That's the whole celebration. V'noich me'yavim is a total distraction. Excuse me. We celebrate what?
It's totally bedava. It's like a that's connected to something. We have a connection because of the enemy.
You know what? I'm giving an example for this. It's your child's wedding. Can I give a marshal for this? How it's a total distraction from celebrating with your child. If trying to find the marshal, if you're going to be celebrating B'Shas Ma'aseh, what? That to pay for tonight's wedding was a fortune, and there were all these obstacles. They're going to take away your money, etc., and you paid for you're able to pay for the wedding. Thank God is able to pay for the wedding. It was a huge Herculean struggle. When the child's dancing with his father's dancing with his child, he starts to be thinking that overcome all of the obstacles and be able to pay this wedding, all whatever, bringing you up. Even all of the challenges of bringing you up to this moment of the chuppah, that's what the Father's thinking. It's you, my child, this moment. Not, or even better, as we're talking better, you're finally out of the house and I'm rid of you. Now you're on your own, I don't have to pay for you anymore. That's what the Father's celebrating. Baruch Hashem, the whole burden with you is over. No, he's celebrating the child simcha. Not to say that this isn't an element, okay. There's also that element. But the ikanakuda is, you're tonight, your chasana, your neshama, you found your soulmate. That's the... Okay, friends.